And you see, the thing about it though is that people I find are more interested in the story. They're not that interested in this law was passed, that commission was struck, this court case was won. They're not, even my interest is engaged is when you start telling me the story. So the fictional aspect, it permeates the whole book because it's what we want to know. We want to know how he got on with his wife, how he treated his children, how he treated his siblings, how he treated his workers, the relational aspect. And a lot of that I had to imagine, I had to recreate. So even though the framework for part two is historically, it's connected to resources, the characterization is all invented.
Okay, awesome. Because I wanted to understand that, because you have to do quite a bit of research, and you're writing about somebody that existed, hence historical memoir or fiction. What if writing a book is not just a way to transform the lives of many people, but also a way to create financial freedom and leave a legacy? Wouldn't you want to find out just how to do that? Well, that's what this show is all about.
Hi, I'm Henika Watkis, Porter, speaker, coach, author of Podcast Power, and the host of the Entrepreneurial You podcast, inviting you to listen to the Entrepreneur Secrets podcast, brought to you by C. Ruth Taylor, best-selling indie author and the Caribbean's most trusted voice on entrepreneurship. Tune in for inspiration, information, and innovation to write and win with books. Get ready to dominate entrepreneurship.
Welcome to episode 8 of the Entrepreneur Secrets podcast. I'm your host, C. Ruth Taylor, and this is a show where we give you the roadmap to win with books beyond book sales and dominate entrepreneurship. It's geared towards authors in the Caribbean and in the diaspora. We want to make the Caribbean the home of independent publishing. And on this show, we teach you a bit of craft, and we teach you how to leverage books to increase your impact and income. Today, we're showcasing a new author who wrote her first book in her retirement. And this program in particular is going to be very interesting. It's about how to turn your family history into a book. We're not looking at a nonfiction this time, but we are looking at a historical fiction. And if you are interested in writing a historical fiction or knowing how you can turn your family history into a book, then this is the episode for you. My guest today is Pat Lindsay Fletcher, and she just released her debut historical novel, Hezekiah, Many Houses, One Life. But before we get into the interview, let's have a word from our sponsor, Frame Art Jamaica.
Come to Frame Art Jamaica Limited for your one-stop framing, graphic design, and printing needs. We frame photos, certificates, paintings, t-shirts, and so much more. You can also get high-quality prints and framing done in a quick turnaround time to fit your budget. Visit Frame Art Jamaica at 22C Old Hope Road, Kingston 5. Weekdays 8:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Call us at 876-929-3058 or visit us at info@frameartjamaica.com. Serving you for over 30 years.
Pat Lindsay Fletcher migrated to Canada in 1987. She is the holder of a degree in sociology, but later she branched off into insurance, and she retired from insurance in 2015. She still lives in Canada with her husband, Keith, in Whitby, Ontario. Over the years, Pat kept a journal of most of her adult life, but never imagined that one day this would result in writing a published novel. So her debut novel, Hezekiah, Many Houses, One Life, is a gripping tale of class, race, and family struggle in the colonial era of the mid-20th century Jamaica. It mirrors the pattern of many Caribbean families and leaves us asking how on earth these generational cycles can be broken. And guess what? It's based on her own family story. And so without further ado, let's welcome Pat Lindsay Fletcher to the podcast. Welcome, Pat.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today.
Indeed, I am excited because one of our mission and our aim is to release more Caribbean authors, not just those at home, but those living in a diaspora. And so we want to showcase new authors on the program. And we are excited because most of the authors that I work with tend to write non-fiction, but yours is a historical fiction. And I want you to just tell us a little bit more about your journey into writing and why you chose this path.
Well, for years I had dreamt of being a writer of some kind, and as you said, journal. But I think it was triggered when I started driving a 72-seater school bus for a local bus company in Whitby. And as I rode the bus through the town, memories started flooding my mind of my childhood. And as these memories became clearer, they connected me to my grandfather and my father's passenger transportation business. And they started to trigger my having to take notes because they were so vivid. And so that was something that really, I would say, the bus became a muse, because every time I sat in the bus and moved off to do my route, these ideas would flow. So that's when I realized that I was onto something a bit more serious than my imagination or my dream, you know. The other thing that you may be interested in knowing that sort of propelled me was that I had a very divine encounter with a second cousin who, as it turns out, lived just a couple of doors from my now husband, who was then my boyfriend. And, you know, when I encountered her just by chance one day, her husband passed by, he invited us to come over for a cup of tea. And when she discovered my last name, she realized instantly we shared the same great-grandmother. And from that, she brought out her album of photos of a branch of the family that I'd never even heard about. My father was a very taciturn man, very secretive about his family lineage, and maybe he was also unknowing of a lot of it. But she was a treasure trove of information, and that also stimulated me to think seriously about getting involved with penning something about the ancestry.
Okay, so we can say that you were divinely led on this path and you had certain markers along the way. But what exactly did you hope to achieve by writing such a book about your family? And did you have any concerns or any fears about penning the history of it? Is that why you chose fiction instead of making it straight non-fiction?
Well, I did have a lot of concerns, Ruth. That's true. You know, about the privacy, about the controversy that surrounded my grandfather, you know, with his political affiliation, with his commercial, you know, enterprises that conflicted a lot with the unions in that day, because we're talking about the 1930s and 40s. And those were very turbulent and also very fruitful periods in the history of our island. But at the same time, it brought a lot of people into a lot of conflicts with different forces. So, and then there was also the personal and private side. I mean, you know, to reveal certain things, what to reveal, what to conceal, and also in research, how much was supported by documents from the newspaper, from the birth and death certificates, and how much was speculative, people's version of things that happened, you know? So it was quite a sifting process. In the end, I felt that it might help to unify the present generation, which is mine, which is almost at the exit door now. So it could be viewed as being too late. But there has always been a fraction. There's always been a fissure in the sibling relationships, both in my grandfather's era and my father's era, and now my era. It's definitely like a fault line in the family structure, going back to the first generation. My great-grandmother's structures had its issues, but she pretty much had children for men to whom she was married. But from my grandfather's era and the father's era, they tended to have children, many children outside of wedlock. And I believe that this resulted in a family structure that was very disjointed, disunified, and destructive. And so I think because of the shame I bore in over the years, in acknowledging my siblings outside of wedlock, and the distance and the doubts in my mind about, are they really my sibling? Is this person just masquerading as a sibling? These sort of thoughts caused quite a bit of psychological pain. And a lot of times the writing comes out of a yearning for healing, a desire to be healed from the things that we feel have stricken us over through our childhood into adulthood and so on. Yeah.
I understand. So in other words, Hezekiah, Many Houses, One Lives, is representative of our typical Caribbean family life. And without giving too much away, was Hezekiah born in Jamaica, or was he born in Panama and then came to Jamaica? Tell us a little bit about the background of Hezekiah.
Well, that's excellent. I'll give you a AAA for that question, because that is, the birth certificate. I have a copy of his birth certificate, and that definitely confirms that Hezekiah was born in Jamaica. However, later, on the eve of publishing the book, we discovered a document on which he reported to the immigration, officials on the document that he was born in Panama, and that his residence was in Monrovia, Liberia, Africa. So that at that point we knew he was going back and forth. But I mean, for him to put that information on an official document then throws his whole identity, I think, or his sense of his self, identity into some sort of question, like, why would he be putting that information on these documents? And even relatives who have gone on to MyHeritage and tried to set up family trees and so on, some of them have documented that he was born in Panama, but he never was. We have proof. I have a birth certificate. It didn't happen. So he's a bit of an enigmatic type of creature. I wouldn't say that the book in any way solves his puzzle. He was a very strange fellow. He was a very strong character as well, and determined to forge through life like metal. Like, he was, sort of inflexible in many ways in how he approached life and family and everything. So he was born in Greytown, Kingston, Jamaica. Yeah. And then they eventually emigrated to Panama. They did in 1905. The family did with him. And then he returned. I have him returning. I have no manifest, no shipper's manifest to prove the date of his return, but I know he did return. And he started a family, after he got into work and so on in Jamaica. And then eventually he just, bloomed and blossomed and became a very outstanding entrepreneur. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So what we're getting here is one way to write a book, or an approach to writing a book. You could explore your family history and then turn that into a book. We are encouraging our people to write and publish our stories. We want to preserve our legacy so that the next generation, or generations far removed, will have a sense of identity, know where they're from. And you heard earlier in Pat's story that not being able to identify who is really in your family, and that sometimes in tracing your family history with the gaps, sometimes there is pain in all of that. But we want you to document things. And we see the importance of documentation, as she's been able to find things to corroborate the story. And my question then, if you were to advise someone who wants to go on a similar path, what are the steps that they should take to write a historical memoir? Maybe just tell us what you did and see if that can help them to work out a pathway if they want to do something similar.
Well, I'll start with where I think I have a gap in my research, because starting out, I was completely blind. So I would try to find all the living parties available to me. I did approach a couple and the response was not positive. One son, who is, I think, still alive, living here in Canada, told me point blank that he did not know his father. So I didn't really get initially a positive response from the living epistles, so to speak. Then I went to the newspaper. A lot of my information, most of it, because Hezekiah was in the newspaper in some cases every day because of the war with the union movement and, you know, his bosses and so on. And also not so much about his earlier life, though. All of that I had to recreate from my imagination. And based on the family structure that I was told, my cousin again, Carol Prince, she is the one who really filled in the gaps for the great-grandmother's era. So if you can connect with a relative that's willing to speak, that is a big asset. And also I went on my heritage website to try to find the documentation, the birth certificates, the marriage certificates, the death certificates. Hezekiah had 2 funerals, you know, and, you know, so those are the resources. I also read books more for this, recreating the setting of the Panama, which I had only been to once before I wrote the book. So to recreate that whole geographical, you know, setting for me, I read books for that. And then I also looked at socioeconomic studies, which gave me information about what was actually going on the ground in Jamaica in the 1920s, 30s, 40s of the history of Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest that you sign up, get a thing with the Daily Gleaner. You know, these are really good resources, but it takes a lot of patience because a lot of times we don't know the search words to put in. So we're putting in search words that are not generating the information that is really relevant to what we want. And it took me a long time. In fact, it's a year after starting that I started to get some more meaningful information from the paper. And then it was almost on the eve of publishing that a lot of information started to come up, and I was wondering, well, where was this information all along? You know, it was there, but so in fact, you know, if anyone wants to, you know, connect with me to help them in that respect, I'll be more than happy because I'll save you a lot of time. This book could have been done in a year. Instead of that, it took me 2.5 years to complete the project, because you just have to be patient, you know, with the process and with the gaps and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you one final question about the book and then get into your writing and publishing process more in terms of how you brought it to what it is today. But before I get to that, how does one, or how did you balance the fiction and the non-fiction? So you found all of this historical data. How does that come into play in you writing the book? In other words, how much of it is real and how much of it is from your imagination? And how did you arrive at that?
That's an excellent question again, Ruth, because the first third of the book is completely based on my imagination and the information I got about setting. Part 2 of the book is more based, a lot of it again, based on stories that I've been told from childhood about how Hezekiah's business was started. And I don't want to give away too much there, but, and also the factual stuff I got from the newspaper really exploded towards the end. And you see, the thing about it though, is that people I find are more interested in the story. They're not that interested in this law was passed, that commission was struck, you know, this court case was won. They're not, you know, even my interest is engaged is when you start telling me the story. So the fictional aspect, it permeates the whole book because it's what we want to know. We want to know how he got on with his wife, how he treated his children, how he treated his siblings, how he treated his workers, the relational aspect. And a lot of that I had to imagine, I had to recreate. So even though the framework for part 2 is historically, you know, it's connected to resources, a lot of the characterization is all invented.
Okay, awesome. Because I wanted to understand that, because you have to do quite a bit of research, and you're writing about somebody that existed, hence historical memoir or fiction. So you have to know how to balance that so that it truly comes out as a work of historical fiction, and it's not just you recreating the real story and just using pseudonyms and things. It's getting the factual information and then making that into your novel.
Right, that's
So
right.
I'm glad for that clarity. So you mentioned that it took you 2 years to write it. Is that 2 years of writing or 2 years inclusive of the publishing process? Talk to us about that aspect.
Okay, so writing the first draft was completed at the end of a year. And then I realized I had to have it rewritten. And so I began to look for people I knew who are avid readers, people who I knew had qualifications in, university literature and so on, to read it. And then they gave me feedback, written feedback, and we had conversations. And then they're called beta readers in the industry. And I rewrote at that point. I had to rework the characters to create more depth and so on. So the second year now, that's pretty much, I was into that. But by June of the second year, I realized I had a final draft. And then I met you in July at Diane Batchelor's launch. Well, not met you, I saw you on the screen. She announced that you had been her publisher, and my spirit just took to you instantly. And I said, somehow, some way, I have to get connected to that woman. And not knowing a whole lot about your background. And so I signed up with you, I think it was in this September or thereabouts, to do the formatting course. Because I realized that this whole world of writing and publishing was completely alien to me. I mean, it was like another planet. And I needed, although I'm older person now, I needed to try to get my mind around these things. And you helped me tremendously with that formatting course. And then in November, you had your rocket writing course, and I signed up. So I just sort of took you as my mentor, my leader. I just trusted you. And it's afterwards that I realized how much teaching experience, and training you've had, and, how brilliant you are and so on. I just was like a little sheep following our shepherd, every step you said, you're doing this, I'm doing it. You're doing that, I'm doing it. So that led me now by September to send it off to the publisher. And that was a big step of faith. I thought, okay, it's done. Thinking that it's done, that I'm sending it, I'm self-publishing, but I've sent it and they're going to take care of it. Oh no, that was just the beginning of a whole new learning curve. I joined up with you in January and for your Authorpreneur Secrets Academy. And it was like a whirlwind of information that you taught me. And it helped me to do my book cover. I had to have the book cover done 3 times. It was on the 3rd time that I got it straight by going the route you suggested to, to search for outside resources. Going through that route, I saved money. It costs a lot of money. These errors are costly. This is why we need people like Ruth, who have been there, done that, and who is honest, who is open about her mistakes, who is generous to guide us and lead us and so on. So Ruth has been really a jewel for me. And so as a result, we got the cover finally done. It was a huge headache, but anyway, eventually it was done. And I'm satisfied, very happy with the cover. Also, editing was another major thing. And I'm happy to say I found Cecile Clayton in Jamaica. A friend referred me to her, Cecile being her sister-in-law, and I'm also a very reputable editor for people like Rex Nettleford and so on. And Cecile came in at cost. She came in, she did my copy editing, she did substantive editing, and she did proofreading. With a lot of the North American sources want you to pay, and if you have a revision, you pay again, and another revision, you pay again, and pay and pay and pay. Where are we going to get all this money from, So thank God for Ruth, who guided me towards these, considerations of how to monitor myself. And so in the end, I just decided that was it. And we just kind of took it from there. And so it came now where by May 24th, the book Hezekiah, Many Houses, One Life was finally in print on Amazon, on, Indigo, on Smashwords. I can't even pronounce some of the platforms that it's on. And, God bless Amazon. People are, have all kinds of issues with different organizations, but I don't have any issue because in this day and age, the internet is is our world, right? And in previous sales experiences, I've been chasing all over Canada, all over Toronto, to get things sold, to get things done. Wear and tear on me, wear and tear on my car, wear and tear on my body. Now I sit down at a computer and it's all done. It couldn't be simpler. So in the end, Ruth, it could have been a shorter journey, but I don't regret the 2.5 years because I have learned so much that now I'm able, actually, if people are willing, to impart what I've learned. And there's no charge. We don't charge for these services that we're offering. It's iron sharpening iron, helping people to avoid that humongous expense that is not necessary, and also just to avoid the pitfalls. Lots of pitfalls and lots of wolves in sheep's clothing. So it will help, we are here to help. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Pat. I am happy that I was there to help you as a guide. And that's part of what this podcast is about. So Pat joined the Entrepreneur Secrets Academy. But if you are not able to join the academy, because we open in June and January, listen to the podcast, hear the experience of the authors who are sharing and pull out the nuggets. And as Pat said, she wants to help you as well to avoid the pitfalls, because the truth is, you may know the steps that you need, editing, you need these kinds of things, but you need a guide, or you are going to make a lot of mistakes on this journey and pay more than you should on this journey. It's going to cost you, but we are here to make the journey easier for you and to break down the barriers. So with that said, I call her Lady Pat. So Lady Pat, for those who want to get in touch with you to learn more about the publishing process, or perhaps to take on another venture like this to write a historical novel, how can they reach you?
Well, right now, Ruth, they could message me through Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook, Carib, CARIB, F as in Frank, OOT, 68. And you can also find me on Instagram at the same location. And then email is patwritepub. So that's for my name, and then WRITEPUB, short for publishing. And that is at gmail.com. Okay?
Excellent. So just before we go, one final word. If you could give an author, a Caribbean person in the diaspora, aspiring author, a final word in terms of this whole process of writing and publishing and tracing your family lineage, what piece of advice would you give them based on what you've learned from this journey? What 3 things would you tell them?
I would tell them, try and have a family meeting about what you're doing first. Okay, your siblings, the siblings that you are trying to reconnect with, especially now with Zoom, you have that. I would also tell them to get a coach. Find a coach. Ruth is, an exemplary coach for a multitude of reasons. And I'm so proud of her because she's Jamaican. So I'm very proud. And I'm also proud of my editor as well. A lot of it was by divine inspiration or connection. It's not, a lot of it is not that I had the intention. A lot of times we are really going blind with a lot of things because there's more that we don't know than what we do know. So that's why we need the coaching, but we have to be selective. Seek, conversations that will give you recommendations I have to mention a friend right here, Sonia Subaran, who lives in Washington, D.C. She's the one who put me on to Cecile, and then it's Diane Batchelor who put me on to Ruth. So it's an interconnected situation and a culture. And I would suggest that you need to connect. Right now, I'm connecting more than electricity. Like I am on it. Like I cannot believe that, I'm coming out of my shell and, connecting. But a lot of it, though, is happening supernaturally. I have to put that plug in because I can't take the credit. How can I? My brain can only compute so much. So we have to acknowledge that, the Lord has played a part in the whole process.
Thank you so much, Lady Pat. We have learned a lot, and this is just the first of many interviews. We want to encourage you to go out and get Hezekiah, Many Houses, One Life. And if you saw before on the screen, if you're watching the episode on YouTube, that I have bought my copy. So let me show you. You purchased this item on the 14th of June. So I want to encourage you to go out and support our authors and write a review or give a rating. And she's doing very well in historical Caribbean and Latin American fiction. So go out and get the book and connect with her on Facebook or Instagram at Carib Foot 68. And you're going to look for Pat Lindsay Fletcher. So Lady Pat, thank you for coming, and we wish you all the best.
It's been my greatest pleasure, Ruth. Thank you so much for having me.
I trust that you enjoyed that interview. I certainly learned a lot. And it points out why we should pen our history. And when we read a segment of Pat's book, she referred to writing the book and doing the research has helped her to connect the gaps, and it has helped to give her courage to face the past and the hurts that needed to be confronted. And just writing the book led to healing. And even though it's part fiction, it's also true to history in a number of areas, as you heard. And so our short reads for today will in fact come from this well-written and innovative novel by Pat Lindsay Fletcher. The short reads is from chapter 1, The Celestial City, 1968. And I am picking up where her grandmother is speaking. And she says, reflecting on my life while I was on Earth, it became clear to me that working for the survival of my family overshadowed the luxury of having regret. How could a wife and mother of 6 realize her dreams? Sewing soldiers' uniforms in the canal zone had to satisfy me. And while I taught all my sons to sew, I wasn't offended when they refused to pursue that trade. My eldest daughter, Marie, was the one who stayed and helped me. Fortified by my earnest daily prayers, I believed the boys would be equally successful at staking their territory in an adverse world. As men, they would be guided by the same fervor for survival that had shaped me. My Earth names were Alexandrina Mackenzie Rose Thomas Lindsay Blissett. It's extended. I know. You see, I inherited both maternal and paternal last names and have added the names of my 3 husbands, including the 2 who passed away. My pet name, though, was Cora, and they allowed me to keep it here in the celestial realm. More complicated than the string of my names was raising 3 sets of children from 3 marriages whose endings dovetailed almost immediately into new beginnings. My life seemed continuous like a Panamanian rainforest river. My first two children, Edgar, born 1889, and Marie, born 1891, were conceived with my first young love, David Thomas, who was also from my village of Hordley in the parish of St. Thomas, on the southeast coast of the island of Jamaica. I married my second husband, George Hezekiah Lindsay, on March 5, 1896, and we remained together until he died in 1905. George was the father of the only surviving of 4 Lindsay children. That was Hezekiah Joseph Gerson, whose life is the centerpiece of this story. And so we stop there for you to get the rest, but already we are learning some history lessons, and even with the names, that is very much reflective of the Spanish culture or the Latin American culture. And so I want to encourage you to go and get this book, Hezekiah. It's on Amazon, both in Kindle and ebook format. I have my copy and I can't wait to finish it. So congratulations, Pat Lindsay Fletcher, on your debut novel. In terms of our authorpreneurship ventures for this week, the Academy is closed for enrollment until January 2022. Both the show and the Academy are based on the book, Authorpreneur Secrets: Write Fast, Publish Affordably, and Generate Lasting Income. This is a handbook if you want to become a nonfiction book coach, offer publishing services, understand the publishing process, and learn how to use your book as a platform to have a greater impact in the world and to increase your income. In that book, we look at 12 different ways that you can monetize your book, as well as how you can publish your book cost effectively and write a nonfiction in 30 days. You can go to our website, authorpreneursecrets.com, and get more information on that. So that's it for today's show. I want to thank you for listening and encourage you to preserve your family history. Write a book with it, whether you do that via a memoir or if you want to write a historical fiction. Document it so that generations after can understand more of their lineage, their identity, their worth, and claim their inheritance. This is Ruth Taylor saying, ta for now, until next time.
I'm Tamara Francis, educator and editor. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast with your network. If you'd like to increase your impact and income with books, visit authorpreneursecrets.com for more resources, including the books Pen It to Win It and Authorpreneur Secrets. Join the Authorpreneur Secrets Academy membership group for courses, coaching, and community support to write, publish, and win with books. Enrollment is in January and June each year. You may also sign up for one of Ruth's Publishing Made Easy courses or private coaching to write and publish your next book. Until next time, go pen it to win it.